I came to India about 40 years ago to start a school of planning in Ahmedabad. Since that time, I've been engaged in urban planning, right from doing the new plan of the capital of Bhutan. I've worked on 6 cities in Sri Lanka. I've even done the replanning of Kalyan and Thane. I've designed even some new towns, and all of this has engaged me with cities. This kind of roller coaster ride has made me love cities. I love cities not just for the boulevards and the parks, but I love cities for the romance in the air, the chit-chat in the cafes, the general debates in places like this or in universities. But that love of cities, that love of urbanism, has also brought on a kind of sense of fright. Why fright? Cities in India over the last 50 years grew. We had migration, we had services problems. But today, in the last 20 years, the Bombay metropolitan region has more than doubled in population. And we have a population in India, the average age is 25. It means migrants to cities over the next 20, 30 years are going to be youngsters. They're probably all 10 years old today. They'll be migrating between age 14 and 24. Now, when these people come to India, they're not like we were when we migrated to cities. They all are carrying the world with them. They're carrying something called a mobile. Even kids on my construction sites, they may not have a nice shirt, but they've got a mobile. And they can look in that mobile and the whole world opens up. They can see Paris, they can see Singapore, they can see Marine Drive. So we're dealing with a new crisis, in my opinion. It's not a crisis of migration and services. It's a crisis of great expectations. It's a crisis of aspirations. The new migrant to the city wants something. He's coming here for the good life. He's not coming here just for a job. And I think that's a sea change in what's been happening in cities over the last 50 years. In our generation, what's ahead of us in the next 2 or 3 years, people are coming here in search of aspirations. Now, what have cities been before? Cities are places where we've had great institutions. We call it society. Financial institutions, social institutions, legal institutions have all grown in cities. Cities are essential for what we call society. Art, education, literature, music, architecture, they've all come out of cities. No? So cities are essential for us to really develop something we call civilization. Even democracy, the civil society, human rights, these are things that grew in cities. So without cities, we're really not going to have a society, we're not going to have culture, and we're not going to have civilization. But my fear is, if we let cities go the way they're going, we're going to have a disaster. The way cities are planned today is we have something called development control regulations. These are rules. We have town planning acts. These are rules. And we have national building codes. These are rules. Rules are there to be broken. What about the values behind cities? What we really need in India is a system of values. We need meanings. We need more than rules and regulations. What's happening is a few politicians, a few vested interests. They sit in secret and they make decisions about flyovers, expressways, metros, new city plans, SEZs, and there's very little, if any, participation of people. What's needed to make cities great is the participation of the people who live there. Now, because of this lack, because we only have rules, regulations, I thought when we were doing the new capital of Bhutan, when we had a lot of discussions with the Chamber of Commerce, we had discussions with neighborhood groups, we said, well, okay, a discussion about what? We need to come up with some axioms. We need to come up with some principles. We need to come up with a meaning system against which you want to build a road through a neighborhood. Let's discuss it based on some principles that we all agree on. Those principles can be changed. They can be reframed. But before starting any planning operation or before starting even a discussion about, say, the future of Bombay, the metropolitan area, our small wards, small neighborhoods, we need some sort of a system of intelligent urbanism. So I came up with these principles of intelligent urbanism. If you go to New York City, you'll find there are block committees. People on blocks sit and they discuss what the corporation and what the urban development authority is going to do in a block. If you go to Hong Kong, community groups. Singapore, community groups. But in India, we don't have a strong community group. Even our politicians who legally should be part of the Metropolitan Development Committee, No. All of those posts are supposed to be held by members who are elected. Out of about 1,000 different types of elected people in the metropolitan area, all of them are filled with bureaucrats and cabinet-level politicians. So we don't have participation, but we must have participation, and to have that, we need something called the principles of intelligent urbanism. Now, we have inherited an urban structure since the World War II and independence, which is characterized by crowding, by spreading out, making infrastructure less efficient, and bad, unhygienic living environments. So we've had cities characterized by urban sprawl. We've had cities characterized by huge differentials between people who live in high rises and they have swimming pools on their decks and people who live in vast, crowded slums. Now, our planning, I'm afraid, is overloading services. It's making things more difficult. There's not enough services to go around. And as I said earlier, we're making decisions with our heads in the ground, with 2 or 3 people sitting in secret, making vast decisions about new projects and new things happening in the cities. So the first principle is balance with nature. Balance with nature means not exploiting nature, but utilizing nature. Utilizing nature means that we don't take out of the earth more than we put back in. But you can see from this picture a very typical situation where we're just tearing up nature to build some large project. We're taking water out of the ground more than we can replenish each year. And it means we're having huge viaducts going further and further into the hinterland to get water. Now, this is a small project I did in the Bombay metropolitan region where nature and buildings are integrated with each other. And it's more of a balance with nature. The next principle is called balance with traditions. It's very important that we understand the order engendered into building systems through years of adaptation. It's like taking 2 steps backwards and learning from the past, and 3 steps forward and learning from the future. So I think we need to involve our own context, our own heritage. We're not Singapore, we're not Los Angeles, we're not Dubai. We have to have our own culture. When you live in a city in India, you should feel this is an Indian city. Most of the buildings we're building, most of the infrastructure we're taking, we're cloning things from other cultures and destroying our own identity, our own sense of place. This picture I'm showing you is the National Ceremonial Plaza in Thimphu, Bhutan that I designed. It's a modern structure because it can seat 20,000 people in the new democracy. But it's a very traditional building because the craftsmen, the materials, they all come from around the area, and it's put up by local craftsmen. Now, appropriate technology is the third principle. Materials, techniques, and management should be consistent with people's capacities, geoclimatic context, and local resources. What kind of materials do we have locally? Should we be buying steel from China, plastic from America, some sort of ceilings from Germany, or should we be using local materials and local craftsmen? When I was working in Bhutan, I couldn't bring craftsmen from outside of Bhutan, but I found I had these lovely craftsmen who could work on my structures, and they practically didn't need to read my drawings. They could just work, look at my drawings, and sit down, and very peacefully and quietly they could build these structures using local techniques. This is the United World College of India. It uses basalt stone from a tunnel that was being dug nearby for the expressway. It's all local materials in an international setting. So there's a lot of things we can do with local materials with appropriate technology. Now, one of the most exciting principles is called conviviality. Vibrant societies are made of, they're interactive, they're socially engaging, and conviviality, it deals with open spaces, public domains, systems where people come out of doors and they meet each other. At the very basic unit, you'll find places for individuals. Most of us will find that we don't have any place we can go be alone, or we can't enjoy just being by ourselves. So a city should have little niches and places, maybe they're just paths and places that we walk, where you can be by yourself. Places for romance. Cities are places for romance. And I think it's very important for romance because then, from romance, you get households, right? And then cities should have gardens. They should have places for picnics. where the kids can play. They spread out a blanket, they have their lunch. The husband, it's the first time he's with his wife the whole week, so she can bitch about how little time he spends with her. And where else would it happen? Probably if they didn't have a picnic, it would end in a divorce. So public spaces are very important interactive spaces in a hierarchy: individuals, friendships, households. And then we get up to something called neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are generally places where, when you're walking down the street, you recognize somebody's face, but you don't know his name. You don't know where he works, but you stand at the same bus stop now and then. You see each other in the market. So neighborhoods kind of have a coziness, they kind of have a security, and they kind of have a comfort level, which you wouldn't find in a higher level or a higher tier of open space. But neighborhoods are essential to give a city its kind of basic fabric, its basic security. People used to talk about the eyes of the street, people sitting in their windows and looking out at passersby and knowing when a stranger comes in, and that's a cue that there could be a security problem. So neighborhoods are very important. People in neighborhoods often dress in a similar way, similar ideas, similar education, similar class of people, and they feel comfortable in their neighborhood. But then they want to get out of that comfort level, and they want to go into something called a node, or a community space, which is actually made up of more larger communities of different backgrounds. They celebrate festivals together, etc. Now, public domains happen at the city level. You have chance encounters, unplanned encounters, and that's exciting. That's why people like to go to Conant Place, Flora Fountain. They like to go, I don't know, to Trafalgar Square, to San Marcos Piazza. They like to go to such spaces where foreigners come and strangers come. And they like to meet strangers because we're all adventuresome. We all like a little risk in life. And strange people are always full of risk. And I think that's a big part of our life in cities. In this case, you can see a woman with a pram, so she's not afraid to bring a kid there. In the background, there's some kind of demonstration. And public spaces are in a hierarchy. They're interrelated, and they give structure to the city. Now, human scale is something rapidly being lost as metros are running through the middle of streets, as huge walls are coming up, when people are walking by buildings which have no scale relation with them. They're inhuman. They give people no sense of place. So we're slowly developing what I call machine age scales, the scale of the flyover, the metro, the big building towering over everyone. And I think we're losing our sense of the human scale, as we find in these traditional streets, something we all love in India. To go shopping, the shopkeeper practically comes out on the street and accosts you. His goods are all over the street. And as we walk in the streets, we bang into people. I think in India we love a touch. We love to touch people. We love to see people in the face. And we like that closeness of human scale. Now, I think along with probably conviviality, cities are places of opportunity. Cities are places where you have certain skills, you have certain things which are unique to you. You've come in from the village, you're good at selling vegetables on the footpath. You think, one day I'm going to have a vegetable shop. You start a beedi stall, the next thing you know, the guy's got 3 beedi stalls, the next thing a small hotel, the next thing he's got a chain of hotels. This is happening. Cities are places of opportunity. Now, basically the matrix says that every person living in Bombay, whether he's the richest man or the poorest, has the same basic necessities. He has a necessity for food, clothing, shelter, maybe education, healthcare, recreation. Maybe he would like to save or he'd like to go in debt. But you have, at all levels, and say if you divide vertically these basic human needs, and horizontally you have the poorest 10% and the richest 10%, the opportunity matrix allows all of these people to follow their opportunities, change their lives, and become more interesting people. So you have slums which are slums of hope. They're not slums of despair. They're entry points into the city where people can find a new life. So we should never criticize any particular kind of settlement. They're all part of the same thing. Now, efficiency is very important. Our cities have to be more efficient if they're going to work. We can't be spreading out cities, and we need efficiency. And the last one, next to the 8th one, is balanced movement. Again, we don't want congested streets with cars. We want mass movement through central corridors. We want rapid bus transit intersecting with rail transit so that we get nodes where people overlap with each other. And the other thing we have to realize is that cities are part of greater regional networks. that a city is not just planned as a little part in a neighborhood or a bit, but they're all linked up in nodes and in central places. In Bhutan, we had 15 urban villages linked together and then linked into a national capital region. Finally, I want to say that without integrity of institutions, cities will never work. Institutional integrity is the bedrock of cities. Without accountability, without transparency, cities will simply falter. So finally, let me end. We must have participation. We must have good cities with people involved, accountability, and I must say that we shouldn't have revolts against us. We should have participation. And if we have all these things, if we use the principles of intelligent urbanism, we will in fact have beautiful cities for the future. Thank you very much.